Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It is a Project Prospect episode. Tuesday, May 23rd is the date. Derek Van Riper, Chris Welsh, Eno Saris here with you on this episode. We continue celebrating Dodgers pitching prospect week. We'll look at the Monday night outing from Gavin Stone and get Welsh's thoughts on Bobby Miller, since Eno and I talked about him a bit on Monday. Big debut coming up on Tuesday night. We've got Patrick Bailey, as teased on yesterday's show, quietly sneaking into the catcher pool. Another injury for George Valera. Jordan Lawlar struggling at Double-A. We'll see if there's anything to be concerned about there. Forrest Whitley, healthy again for now. We'll talk about his chances of possibly breaking through and joining the Astros rotation at some point this season. And we'll go wherever the wind takes us. We have a very laid-back vibe on our Tuesday episodes because, look, anything's on the table. Anything prospect, keeper, dynasty related is fair game. We begin with the odd outing from Gavin Stone. And it's odd because last night against Atlanta, Gavin Stone had 14 swinging strikes and only had one strikeout. Gave 5 earned runs, really struggled early in that outing, over 4 innings, 79 pitches in total. What do we make of this? I mean, Welsh, we were looking at some of the maps of where he was locating the fastball just a few minutes ago, and it was ugly. It was
messy.
It was throwing paint all over the canvas.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It looked
Jackson
like just
Pollock.
some like little 2-year-old just throwing paint on there because the whole thing was all over the place. And, I mean, we'll probably break this down here in just a second, but, like he wants to be a big fastball changeup guy, but the early rub here is no one is afraid of his changeup early on because he's not really throwing it for strikes. His fastball wasn't hitting in big strike counts either. And he had really an absurd number of 22% outside of the zone swing percentage overall on all pitches, which you looked at before the show.
Average is 30.
Yeah, and that of qualified, that would have been the worst in baseball. I mean, it was really bad, and you can speak to it, but the first inning was gross. The fastball command was all over the place, and the fastballs, particularly on the heat map, looked insane because it was just like it was high, low, right, left. It was everywhere. He threw more balls than strikes in this, and he's got to make his big damage off of the changeup. But I just don't like. I don't know if it's there enough where he's getting anybody fearful, especially in those 2-strike counts, where that's where you're going to make your big money on the changeup. And he doesn't really seem to be throwing it for strikes early on. He's just throwing it to try to induce swing. So Gavin Stone, I don't think is my big guy. I wasn't ever fully in love with him. I actually like the guy we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But, you were looking at a little bit more on him, especially in the 2-strike counts. And it was pretty messy.
Yeah, the weirdest thing was that he got to 14 2-strike counts. I mean, he, like you said, he had 14 whiffs. And in those 2-strike counts, he threw an equal amount of fastball and changeups. I think it was like 8 fastballs, 6 changeups, and 3 sliders. And he got a swing on 2 of them. One was a foul ball and the other was, I think, his strikeout. And that's all he did. But if you look at the heat map for his fastball and 2-strike counts, of course, he's trying to, get a swing on a pitch that's probably outside the zone, but he was nowhere near the zone. It was way outside the zone. So I did a quick thing here, and I know this is irresponsible because Location Plus does not come online this quickly, but I did want to put him in context how bad his command has been in the early going. Among the pitchers that have had 5 innings or more, Shintaro Fujinami is worst in baseball on Location Plus among starters. We knew that. We knew that with our eyes and our eyeballs. He had an 86 Location Plus. Second is, of course, could you guess? Major league starter with the worst Location Plus other than Shintaro Fujinami.
Oh, it's got to be a heavy walk. I mean, Flaherty came to mind, but he's been better, but his walk numbers are insane.
Luis Medina is another A.
Oh, that's a good one. Where is Medina?
I don't know if he's got maybe he's not qualified.
He is there. He is there. He's actually a little bit beyond the guys I'm looking at. Brad Keller is number 2.
Oh, yes, Brad Keller, the guy that I fell for because he had at one point shown 2 above average breakers.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you can't land it.
No, you can't land it. Gavin Stone is next. After him is Jose Budo, Yanni Chirinos, Jose Urania, Madison Bumgarner, Brandon Williamson. It's not a good list to be on.
It's a depressing list of players. Oh, Ken Waldichuk's there too.
Yeah, so it's a tough place to be. In terms of stuff plus, I could see him having a good changeup and the model not quite catching it. It's not liking it though, and it's an average slider by Stuff Plus, but that's actually 100 is below average for a slider in Stuff Plus. So he's not calling out to me in any way. I still think that there's a chance that he becomes Tony Gonsolin. I think there's some similarities there. Tony Gonsolin has outperformed some of his numbers in the past. And Tony Gonsolin had league bottom command at one point. Remember when he was like off the playoff roster basically because he couldn't find the zone. So maybe there's something here long-term, but I'm out on Gavin Stone for this year. And
all right.
I was never really that into him.
I was going to ask you an interesting one because you brought this up, not me, before people yell at me, but beforehand, you had brought up off air Brandon Pfaadt, and I'm very disenchanted about Brandon Pfaadt. But I was going to ask you Brandon Pfaadt or Gavin Stone, but I think you've got your answer.
Brandon Pfaadt has a league average 4-seamer and 2+ breaking balls by Stuff Plus. The location numbers are around average. I think he's coming online. You're starting to see swinging strikes. I think you're starting to see the positive future for him. I'm definitely still into Brandon Pfaadt. I don't know if I'm super into him this year, and I've fallen out of love a little bit with the rookie starting pitcher this year, just because I think there's just so much to get right to be a good major league starter. You know what I mean? Like, you can have all the stuff and not command it, or you can have all the stuff and throw it in the wrong counts. You know what I mean? And or you can fall in love with one pitch or love your changeup. Like, think of Blake Snell. Blake Snell loved his changeup for so long, and it was bad for him. And he got better when he turfed a pitch that he loved, So, the journey to becoming a really good major league starter, I think, is most often a long one. Grayson Rodriguez might have been tipping his pitches, it turns out. And, so now he's not tipping his pitches. He's got to figure out what to do with the cutter because it might be a bad pitch, but he loves it. So, Grayson Rodriguez is one of the guys who was really, really supposed to land. I mean, everything looked good. Prospect, scouts loved him. Everybody loved Grayson Rodriguez, right? And I still love Grayson Rodriguez, and I'll put him ahead of most of the guys we talk about today. But I think he does tell you something about how difficult it is to be a rookie starter.
Are you disenchanted, though, because there's such a wave of them, where a couple maybe have succeeded and done well, like Yuri Perez looks good, and maybe we say Tanner Bybee, whatever, but you can't focus on the 2 or 3 that have looked good because the sheer number of guys, it's overwhelming of how many we've had and how many are kind of falling apart. Do you think it's the wave?
Well, it's due to the injuries, I guess. Maybe there's some of these guys that shouldn't have been pressed into duty.
That it was too soon?
But there's also just the 23-year-old starter, 22, 23-year-old starter does it had been going out of style before this year.
You guys want to play a game?
Ooh.
Okay.
Ooh, you want to play a game?
No, I will lose.
Since 2018, I've got rookie pitchers on a board right here. Since 2018. So the last 5 seasons plus this one, minimum 50 innings pitched. There have been 19 pitchers in 50-plus innings as rookies. 19 pitchers have been 2 WAR pitchers. So that's, only a few per year. It's not a ton. So how do you guys, if you alternate, just going back to 2018. So the last 5 years, and then if this season technically would count, no one has reached it this season. I'll give you that one as a freebie. 19 pitchers have been 2 WAR pitchers, according to Fangraphs, as rookies.
Shane McClanahan?
Shane McClanahan, he's in there. He's in the top 10. I think that's 2021. That's a recent hit. Part of the reason
I got one, so I'm happy. So now Eno's got a match because I didn't think I was going to get one.
But yeah, go back and forth. We'll alternate.
Dylan Cease.
Dylan Cease as a rookie? No. Didn't do it as a rookie. So 1 strike for Eno.
Okay.
Welsh.
When was this? 2018?
2018. Yep.
Zach Gallen.
Zach Gallen, narrow miss, 1.6 WAR, but he 15 starts, 80 innings with 10.8 Ks per nine, 281 ERA. That played for fantasy purposes, so it didn't work for WAR, but it was a hit as far as a rookie pitcher pickup. So one strike.
Julio Urias.
Rookie year too far back and kid gloves, so that's another strike.
Okay, you know what I need to do? I need to look at names real quick. Okay,
you don't have to go real far. You don't have to go real far back here.
Well, there's looking at names. I'm looking at names.
Yeah, I just need to visually see names. How about George Kirby?
Yeah, George Kirby. That's a big hit. 130 innings, strikeout per inning, good walk rate, 339 ERA.
Strider had his rookie eligibility.
Spencer Strider tied for the best rookie season we've seen since 2018 in terms of WAR.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would have been number one, but the innings count was low.
We're still going here. Okay.
Yep. Still got two. You got one strike.
Sandy Alcantara?
Yep. Sandy Alcantara's a hit. Low K rate, but 197 and a third innings since his rookie season. What if he'd actually won some games, too, from a roto perspective? Yikes.
This
Eno?
is on Eno.
Logan Webb.
This is the quietest one. Logan Webb.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Logan Webb.
So wait, if I get
doesn't
one right
strike
here,
out
do
a lot
I
of
win the
guys.
game because he's on
You win
three
the
strikes?
game. Yep.
Okay, so there's a lot of pressure on this one.
It's to send him home. Send him home with the Lakers.
Ooh, I got a couple options I'm looking at here, and we've gone through them. All right, rookie year, final answer. I will go with Alek Manoah.
Yes, just made it. Exactly 2 WAR. Remember when he was really good? That was fun. So some other notable ones. Trevor Rogers tied with Strider. His rookie season was fantastic back in 2021.
Wow, yeah.
Mike Soroka was third. Walker Buehler is up there.
Yeah, when I was looking at names, I was like, they're not all here. Like, because
They
I'm looking
definitely
just
weren't,
at this leaders for this year, and I'm like, no, they're not all on this list. So
No,
not all of them stuck with it.
Luis Garcia, John Means actually snuck on this list. Volume is a big part of the WAR part of this. Shane Bieber, Spencer Turnbull, Chris Paddock, Brad Keller's
been a
actually
rookie
on here.
since 18, and Urias wasn't?
I think it's an innings thing.
Huh.
Weird.
Jack
Flaherty made the list.
In my head, Bieber is older than Urias.
Me too. I'm 100% with you.
He is
my mind,
older.
Bieber's been around since like 15.
Yeah.
So.
Reed Detmers made the list. Logan Gilbert, Joe Ryan.
Oh man! Instead of Logan Webb, I was debating the Logans. I thought Gilbert was like a 1.6 or something his first year.
Yeah, so I think we have had enough recent success from rookie pitchers, and especially having a massive hit last year with Strider, having a pretty big hit 2 years ago with McClanahan. With those two guys being treated the way they were in drafts this past season, perhaps that has made us all more aggressive towards rookie pitching. But I also think there's a bigger conversation with rookie pitching. It seems like because of all the tools teams have now to develop pitching and monitor pitching, it's easier to see when a pitcher is ready. It's easier to know if they have an arsenal that will get big league hitters out so they can move a little faster. And I think that gives us more confidence that they can have success right away, even if it shouldn't, or even if it gives us more confidence than we should have. I think that's all part of the equation here. So do you think we're the victims of some recency bias?
That bad. I mean, in terms of this year, even among the different big bid rookies, Hunter Brown has to be a success story. We saw that one coming. I've ranked him in the top 40, I think, or top 50. Bryce Miller so far, although the strikeout rate and the secondaries, there's something to be said that he kind of looks like an all fastball guy right now, but Tanner Bybee, although, there too, the strikeout rate's not that good, and it hasn't been as good since the beginning. I still like Logan Allen better than Tanner Bybee. I'm maybe alone on that one, but so Logan Allen is a win. Taj Bradley, I think, is still a win. So that's a lot of wins for rookie pitchers, I guess.
But then the volume kind of brings it down. That's what I was talking about. It's like, it's actually a lot of pretty solid wins, but then you think about the sheer amount of guys that have come up and the expectations. And I feel like that's what might be muddying the waters of, being disenchanted with some of the rookie pitchers. Like, oh man, there's so many that are failing. It's like, well, there's just so many more. And there's a lot that are doing really well and contributing to fantasy teams right now.
Yeah, if you start looking at the lower number ones, like the 10, 5 and 10, you've got Grove there. I think Schuster, Dre Jameson,
Dylan Dodd,
there's been some misses down there. And then there's this Grayson Rodriguez, the only guy with like 40 innings where you're just like, I see an 11 K9, a passable walk rate, and a 6 ERA. Come on. This can't be. This is not Grayson Rodriguez. I'm holding.
Home runs, mainly.
Yeah.
It's frustrating. But yeah, I think I'm still in on rookie pitchers. I'm not going to learn my lesson yet. Maybe Eno's right to back off them a little bit. I do think the Bobby Miller debut on Tuesday is going to pull some skeptics back in. He is electric.
Second best stuff in AAA.
I was going to say he actually might be the one the next guy to be added to this group of success stories. Hopefully, it's a rough matchup. Seeing Gavin Stone get lit up, but Bobby Miller has got the stuff to potentially be the next name that we are going to put into hopefully the success stories. And I think as a pretty, especially you look at like what we just broke down with Gavin Stone and, command at this stage, this is going to be a massive issue, whether the stuff and the fastball and the changeup and how he uses them get better. If he's not going to be able to command those pitches, regardless if he has better stuff than Bobby Miller, he's going to be out. He has a much higher likelihood at this point, I would say, regardless of even seeing Bobby Miller pitch right now, of losing that long-term Dustin May spot if Bobby Miller can just be the guy that he has been kind of on paper with the big stuff plus numbers. And I believe you just said it, he's number 2 in stuff plus in the minors right now.
Yeah, it doesn't come without a little bit of an asterisk, which is that, his Fangraphs command grade was 40-45. His location plus in 250 AAA pitches is a 94. That's fairly low. I mean, we were talking about 89s when we were talking about Stone. So it's better than that. But 94, just to give you some other high stuff guys and their location numbers in the minors, Taj Bradley had a 90 when he was working on his fastball. So that's a little bit of the concern with Taj Bradley. Grayson Rodriguez had a 93 in the minors. And Tanner Bybee had a 97. Location plus, and then the veterans that were down there for rehab, Luis Severino 106 location plus, Tyler Glasnow 103 location plus. So there is something to be said for command counting, and the fact that I have 3 names on this minor league stuff plus list that are reaching out to me that are new to the list or interesting to people. Bobby Miller number 2, AJ Smith-Shawver is number 9 on this list now. And then a new entry, Will Warren from the Yankees, entered the top 20. All of them are hot names in fantasy baseball right now, I think, or at least I'm trying to make Will Warren hot, give him some heat. They're all 93, 94 location plus. So if they succeed or don't succeed, there's still an element of command mattering for these guys. The one thing with Bobby Miller, with the stuff so good like that, I think he's the kind of guy who can target the middle of the zone and let his stuff eat and still have success. So
his last start, by the way, I pulled it up. I don't know if you guys looked at this recently, but his last start was on the 17th in AAA, and he was touching 101. He did 101.2, average 99.
Yeah, they told him to throw 100, not 102.
101.2, average 99.5. He was pretty steady, 89% fastball, curveball, and his slider though was getting into the mix. Whiff percentage wasn't like the greatest. CSW percentage wasn't the greatest, but he's got really big spin. He's got a big powering fastball that major leaguers are going to pull out their shoes and try to swing through. And I actually think as long as he has solid command in this first start, he's got a real decent shot to pile up some strikeouts and get some guys whiffing, because he's going to just try to pump this fastball. And then in 2 strike counts, he can hit him with the slider, which he throws around 10% of the time or whatever. So I'm encouraged about Bobby Miller. I've always been a big Bobby Miller fan. I liked him more than any of the Dodger guys for quite some time.
And don't you think that there's an opportunity here for him too?
Yeah. Well, we were talking off air that like the Julio Urias situation gets Bobby Miller to literally like piggyback days with Gavin Stone. And I think this is a pure audition period.
Yeah,
like I don't, even though they said like Gavin Stone's going to get starts, I don't think that's guaranteed. I think over these next 2-3 starts, Bobby Miller has as much of a chance as Gavin Stone to take over that long-term role if and when Urias comes back and they have to send one down. I don't know. I kind of lean that I think at the end of the day, I think it's Stone that is going to go away. That's my gut. I mean, Bobby Miller can get lit up for 18 runs or whatever, but I think he's going to find that would be amazing if they committed him too for that many runs. But I think Bobby Miller is going to find some good success. I think that power fastball is going to play, and there's some pretty big spin on his secondaries that I think he's going to get some whiffs in that first game.
So people who listen to more than one podcast that I'm on might remember on the 3-0 show this year, I made the bold prediction that the Dodgers would narrowly miss the playoffs. And I looked at a few things and I said they're relying a lot on the young guys. If Miguel Vargas and James Outman aren't very good, if Max Muncy's not past Muncy, they're going to have problems. And if the young pitching doesn't come through, they're just not going to be that same team. They've ticked all the boxes so far. It is a bold prediction that has gone very flat so far. But hey, time's still on my side. There's still a lot of time for chaos to reign in the league. I don't want chaos. I just know it's coming anyway. I think the problem I have with the Dodgers rotation, that's a good thing, I think, in this case, Stone and Miller could both stay in the rotation if Tony Gonsolin gets hurt again, or if Noah Syndergaard is still not pitching very well, or if Kershaw has his usual 3 to 4 week stint on the IL. Like any and all of those things could open the door for both if they perform. The problem that they have is that they pitch for the Dodgers. The Dodgers have other guys they can turn to if they don't like what they're getting from Stone and Miller. They can just keep going into the cupboard. I think they have that sort of depth. They've always
and Emmett Sheehan. That's I've been trying to preach about Emmett Sheehan. That's the next guy who kind of lives in a similar Bobby Miller world. It's a big power fastball. One of the top K guys in the entire league. He pitched in the AFL. Was probably one of the most consistent, best pitchers in the Arizona Fall League last year. Even though he's at AA, he's had the experience. They built him up, and he's had some walk issues. All these guys have this big like power stuff, these big power pitches that are having walk issues, but no Dodgers pitcher has been a bigger strikeout option than Emmett Sheehan, and I think he's ready. So to your point, like if one of these guys doesn't work out, Emmett Sheehan's gonna get some run at some point this year, and he's a guy who's been putting up 10 strikeouts left and right, but he did have a 5-walk game. But yeah, I agree with that. Like Syndergaard might be a reason why 2 rookies can take over a rotation spot, but none of these guys are guaranteed just because they're here to hold on to it, because you do have other pitchers that are in the wings, Emmett Sheehan in my mind being the next guy.
Kind of a never-ending competition for the Dodgers.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you can't say about the Yankees that, in opposition is that they definitely haven't had that same depth of starting pitcher, at their disposal. And right now, it looks like they're fielding an all right front 5 with Severino coming back, Rodon sometime coming back, and
he's
Clark
with the team
Schmidt.
now. Actually, they just said, they announced today he has joined the team in this in process, so that's a good sign.
To continue his rehab though, so that's also weird. But in any case, they could get close to the point where they're pushing Clark Schmidt down to a number 6, and being fully healthy. However, we also know that, like you just said about the Dodgers, their injuries are always there for them. Herman could get injured, or Rodon could not come back from this back thing. There's definitely that. And I think beyond Clark Schmidt, I have not been in love with Brito. And so that's why I wanted to bring up Will Warren, because now he's at AAA. He's got the kind of Hayden Wesneski selection of pitches where it's a sinker, sweeper, gyro slider. And I think maybe a little bit of the same sort of maybe command issues that Wesneski that maybe got him sent down. But also kind of an interesting player because he is definitely a product of the Yankees player development philosophy. He's just another Wesneski. And, Warren could be jumping ahead of Brito, Tully, Vasquez. That's their depth. So right now, Will Warren might be the number 7 in New York. And 7s get innings. So I just wanted to throw him out there as a deeper name.
I like that.
We actually had a question about Hayden Wesneski from Aaron, and the subject line was Holden Wesneski. It was a question about whether or not Hayden Wesneski should be stashed while he's at AAA. It was a pretty bumpy start to the season. The K rate dipped from where it was last year, right? In the brief time we saw Hayden Wesneski last season, 25% K rate, good control, pretty good swinging strike rate underneath the K rate too. So it made some sense that you could buy in and possibly get a pretty good back end starting pitcher with Ks. I get the sense they will need him again in Chicago, so you'll get innings again later. But the bigger question is, can he figure it out? Because what I saw,
want those innings?
Yeah, do you want those innings? The last time I looked, the four-seamer was getting hammered. Hayden Wesneski's fastball was just getting obliterated by opposing hitters,
and it's not good.
And that seems like a huge problem.
Plus fastball, yeah. I mean, I think his sinker is good. I think that with the problem is he's sinker, cutter, sweeper, and lefties. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can't be a one-pitch guy against lefties. So he's trying to be fastball cutter against lefties, and that ain't working. So, I don't know if he just needs to, just embrace the sinker, find some places he can stick the sinker, or embrace the change or be cutter change against lefties. But he needs to find something out against lefties. I'm saying all this without looking at his splits because, sometimes splits can tell a lie. But, yeah, 340 WOBA. No. Why did that just change in front of my eyes? That was very strange. 433 WOBA against lefties, 285 against righties. I mean, that's everything. He needs to find, lefties hit this year 325, 366, 662 against him. But as much as you want to say, well, don't hold him, that's terrible. Righties hit 234, 277, 377 against him. So I still think he's kind of like he's like a stroke of genius away from being a good pitcher. You know what I mean? Like there's something, he just needs to figure something out against lefties.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking of how the Rays sent down Taj Bradley and they're like, you need to stop throwing the curveball and your cutter percentage needs to go down. A really good organization would probably be like, okay, so you'll never, ever throw your four seam ever again. We're going to come to pretend you don't own this pitch anymore. Yeah. And then let's start from there. And I wanted to take a look real quick. Our lovely foray into, baseball savant and trying to quickly get to something. I couldn't even get to it. I wanted to get to see his last start. I must be on the wrong day. I wanted to see if the pitch usage has changed because you're right. When you look at him, the fastball heat zone too is like absurdly ridiculous. It should just go back to sinker. And then the sweeper was the second most thrown pitch. Go sinker, sweeper, cutter, with the occasional changeup. And I was curious, but of course I can't get to it because I must have picked the wrong day. He's cut his
four-seam usage, but he's still using it 25% overall. And when you look at lefties, that's the problem. He's using it 25% against lefties. He can't cut it against lefties, and he's throwing the sweeper to lefties because he just doesn't have any other pitches. You can't just throw a cutter over and over again. So, but if you look at his last few games, the combined usage of the cutter and change is the most he's had against lefties. And I bet you, that's what I would do if I sent him down. I'd say, hey, how about cutter change against lefties with the occasional back foot sweeper?
And I've been
can that get you through some lefties?
Yeah, and let's say I think I finally got it because it looks like they played a double header on the 20th. Here we go. Okay, we got it. So so we have an interesting development. In his last start, his four-seam fastball was the third most used pitch instead of being the number one most used pitch. He was 31% sweeper, 27% sinker, 26% four-seam with a 9% cutter on it. And his fastball actually had a 57% whiff rate in that game, maybe because of the different usage. 32% whiff rate, 28% CSW. He actually had 5 more called strikes. He had a 43% CSW on his 4-seam fastball. So it's not going anywhere, especially when those minor league numbers are there. But maybe the usage of it is going to help because it was overwhelmingly the top pitch.
2-strike thing, or like you have to throw it outside of the zone up. You know what I mean? Like never throw it in the zone.
Yeah. Yeah, so that might be encouraging. That might be something encouraging to see, is that they're embracing that sinker usage is the thing that jumps out here, because that was lower and it's more of a 3-pitch mix, not heavily relying on the 4-seam, and maybe that's going to make it more effective. So, I mean, it's AAA, but you could maybe be optimistic.
And generally, the thing that I like about him is, a bunch of different pitches, some that are really good. And then some that aren't. And so he needs to kind of sort through them and figure out what he can do with them,
Yeah. 16% sinker on the year, 26% in the minors. So it's a 10% increase usage of the sinker since he's been sent down. So maybe that will unlock.
So generally, someone you still believe in, if you're in a situation where you have guys giving you innings right now and you need innings, and Aaron's particular question was, Ryan Nelson, Luis Ortiz, Michael Lorenzen, who you picked up for that 2-step.
I love Luis Ortiz. So, if I could trade some upside in the big leagues for some upside in the minor leagues, I'm going to take the upside in the big leagues.
What do you do with Luis Ortiz? This last start was incredible. The start before that, he looked so bad. It was unbelievable. That pitch he could not throw a strike. He was walking everybody. He's just so inconsistent. It drives me bonkers.
I have a theory about him. So, one of the things he struggles with is separating his 2-seam and his 4-seam. And I think that is actually his command issue, because if you think about it, if you were trying to replicate a fastball, and sometimes it comes out as a 4-seam, sometimes it comes out as a 2-seam, right? Like you're gonna miss your spots, and you're gonna walk people. And so I'd be tempted, if I coached him, to wonder if he should really almost turf one of the fastballs and just have one fastball that he can repeat over and over again, and he can at least know where to put him. Of course, everybody wants someone to have a 4-seam and a 2-seam, so you can throw the 4-seam to lefties and the 2-seam to righties, and that sort of deal. But if the end goal is for him to be able to command the pitches and not do what he did in the start before last, then I think maybe it's almost like the switch hitter thing. It's like, okay, switch hitting's not working. Having 2 fastballs is not working. Let's have one fastball that you can actually command, because otherwise, the breaking ball I love. I think the changeup looks good. The velo is really good. So, if I could make that choice right now, I would do it, just because they both have a fair amount of upside, and one's in the big leagues.
Right? And why wouldn't they do that? Why is there not a look at and deciphering this? And would you want to change something like that in season for a guy like this at the majors?
Well, I think he's still in the developmental phase. You know what I mean? So, if you're developing him, then you want to ideate on the best possible outcome for him, which is you have a 4-seam and a sinker. But if the 4-seam, if you just keep flogging that 4-seam and it's not working, and they're just blending together. Let me see if I can find a good way to do this. Horizontal movement. No, that's not it. Vertical movement, maybe.
When you watch him, it's definitely one of those arsenals. You're like, this guy should get a lot more strikeouts. It's there. Yeah. You can see
the vertical movement is dropping on his 4-seam, and it's getting closer to the sinker.
So there is less separation between the 2 pitches, which might also be maybe he's hammering a little bit more too, and he's losing command with the 2-seam or the sinker.
Yeah. I mean, I just think that there's something there where it has to do with fastball command. It's like when you watch him, you're like, oh, these pitches are all amazing. Why don't you get more whiffs? I think it has to do with getting ahead to get those whiffs.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, though, circling back, Luis Ortiz, a better project to buy in on than holding a Hayden Wesneski for when he comes back up.
Yeah, if that's the choice at your disposal, then yeah, I'm doing that. But if you're talking about I'm in a deep keeper league, should I just drop him? I'd rather hold Wesneski. So, But
Yeah,
if you're at all like about this year, then I think it's about,
the guy that's helping you now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If you're playing long term, Wesneski over Ryan Nelson.
Yeah.
I
think so.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's probably a sweep then. I think I'm also on the Wesneski side. It's close. So it really depends on how badly you need the innings in the short term. And Nelson could be in danger of going down for a little bit. That's very much in the range of outcomes for him. Big start for him Tuesday night coming up on the road against the Phillies as they get a little healthier in that group.
It's also blah for Nelson, and I think the fastball sometimes is good and sometimes is bad. And then if you just look at Nelson's, what he's done so far this year, it's like all schedule. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you're like, oh, he's been better recently. Well, yeah, he went to Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Washington. That was pretty good. So I'm terrified of throwing Ryan Nelson in like a good matchup for the hitters, in a tough matchup.
Yeah, that's where I've been for a while. That Oakland spot was the rare. I feel good about this opportunity for Ryan Nelson. Thanks a lot for that question, Aaron. Let's talk about Forrest Whitley for a moment. The Astros are having some issues in the back of their rotation. I say this on, on the eve of a Brandon Bielik start against the Brewers on Wednesday that'll probably make me tear some hair out. Bielik is that number 5 starter right now. JP France has a spot in the rotation. Lance McCullers still several weeks away. I think I saw July as a timetable for him. Whitley is, for me, a pretty harsh lesson in how it can go wrong for a very, very good pitching prospect. And there are plenty of people that had Whitley as the number 1 pitching prospect in baseball. It was a deep arsenal with premium velocity and a great organization. Everything you could possibly want, right? He's 6'7", he's 240, he's got 5 pitches. What could possibly go wrong? Well, everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. Tommy John surgery, just all sorts of stuff along the way.
Like he's gotten it back. I mean, he used to have whiff rates that are almost 50% higher than ones he's showing.
Yeah, he's tweaked stuff. I remember James Anderson and I, the first time Forrest Whitley was there, we were watching him, and it was at Scottsdale Stadium, and we were like standing on the concourse and just watching him blow 97 by guys, and we're like, this is the best guy ever. And then he had a suspension issue, an injury issue. He came back to the Arizona Fall League. He lost command of pitches. He was trying to reestablish ways to pitch in the Arizona Fall League. More injuries, inconsistencies. It's everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and it's still not right in the minors. So that's the weird thing about this situation. It's still not good. His ERA's inflated. His walk rate's almost 5. There's no like underlying like, hey, XFIP is better. It's like it's 4 or 5. It's not good.
I thought he used to be like a good four-seam guy. I'm looking at his Stuff Plus numbers, and he's a sinker curve guy now.
Yeah, but I think that was part of like he altered his arm angle in the Arizona Fall League a couple years ago because he was just pumping 4 seams, and I don't think he could throw it anymore. He lost complete command because I remember watching some spring starts where that fastball was just everywhere. So this was probably, I don't recall when any type of change like this happened, but he probably was able to bully in more command of a sinker than he was in a 4-seam, but that's also equating to like lower strikeout numbers. His walk rates are still high. I want to believe, but the only thing I believe Forrest Whitley is going to be able to do is be a bullpen arm. I just think this is like Andrew Miller over again. We just need to, maybe he can be a dominant 1-inning guy, but the team has not made the commitment because he can still throw hard. It's just second time through the order, I think you're done. And I want to believe, because we all believed for so long, and we saw Mackenzie Gore go through like 2 or 3 years of absolute garbage, look like one of the worst pitchers, and find it. But we're like 4 or 5 years into this now. Like, this is a long time ago when Forrest Whitley was the top guy, and there's really no signs of life except what? He's at AAA and there's an opportunity out there. Yet he's still not getting the opportunity. JP France, Brian Bielik, those are the guys getting the opportunity because I don't think they believe he can go 5. I'm surprised the change hasn't happened into a bullpen arm yet, but I don't know what the relative changes are with Forrest Whitley. I would love for him to succeed and be cool again, but I don't think it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, they've had so much success with, relievers that have had flaws, but they've become dominant. Maybe that's the path for him. And couple more years pass and something else changes. But I kept looking at him and thinking, is he a good keeper in Dynasty Stash, given what's happening right now? The usage at AAA has been really frustrating. I know he hasn't thrown that many innings in recent years because of all those injuries and the suspension that you mentioned, but it's all 3s and 4 and change so far in his appearances.
Yeah, 4 2/3 is the most he's pitched. I mean, just think about also just like how long this guy's been around. He's locking up to 26 here soon. He's had injuries and stuff, yet he's still not going 5 innings. He's not going 5. Like this, there's no comp here, but just want to point out, like Mason Miller had less minor league innings in his career and made it to the majors than or just about the same innings that Forrest Whitley has just this year, and he still can't get there. I mean, it's just it's a mess. And I think the Astros are telling us about Forrest Whitley. Everything that they've gone through, you'd give this guy a chance if he was something. I don't know that they can push themselves into it. They haven't fixed anything. And I don't know the format where you keep Forrest Whitley. You could name me off formats and I'd probably be like, no, and no.
Like I have Elvin Rodriguez in Devil's Rejects, which is a 20-team, like 40-man rosters, I think. It's
deep leagues, yeah, real deep.
And I'm not dropping Elvin Rodriguez for Forrest Whitley.
Is Whitley a free agent in that league?
I don't know if I'm like running to check.
Elvin did just go on the IL, by the way, in the minor. Just point out. But I think it's only a seven day or something.
There's something going on in Houston. I don't know that it's like a slowing of the player development machine that's over there, but I would say that they've cleaned the cupboard out so thoroughly. There's nothing left in terms of arms. I'm looking at the Fangraphs 2022 update for Houston, and I've just clicked through all of the pitchers, the starting pitchers in the top 20. So by the time you get to the end of the top 20, you're talking about 35 future value. Those are not even considered usually to be future starters. So I looked in their top 20, and the average ERA of their top 20 of starters in their top 20 prospects, other than Hunter Brown, is like a 6. So it's not. I mean, I guess it could just be Whitley, or it just could be that they've graduated everybody.
Yeah, and they didn't replenish. They now I will say they do have a guy who's interesting. Let me look at his numbers before I start spouting out how awesome it is. Yeah, Andrew Taylor, who they just drafted last year in the competitive round, 3.5 ERA, 38 strikeouts in 27 innings. He's in low A ball. I've got him on my prospect
A-ball guys
list.
like Michael Knorr, who was drafted in 2022 in the 3rd round. Is in their top 20, and he's got sort of eye-popping-ish strikeout rates, 38%. But he's an A-ball. So.
But they're all exactly. They're all far away. They didn't do the replenishment along the way, or they just didn't pull a Royals where they're like, okay, screw it. Like, let's just get like 7 guys that are in, high A, double A that can move quickly. They've also lost picks. They didn't have a whole bunch of picks.
Oh, and they got in trouble.
Yeah, they got in trouble. And then, the hitting development is on a positive side because Drew Gilbert looks like one of the bigger steals from last year's draft and first-year player drafts, who's already up at Double-A, and he could start contributing, I think, tomorrow. I mean, Jose Altuve went out of his way after a rehab stint to say how impressive Drew Gilbert is and that he's ready. He's ready to come up. Nice. And they got a kid, Ryan Clifford, who also out of that draft. So I think they did a really good job as far as the hitting goes. But yeah, they don't have a new, fresh set of guys that can help this year, next year on both sides. And it seems to be a little bit more weighted towards hitting than it is pitching. And, what do? They don't make trades to bring in new pitching prospects. It's just not been part of their algorithm lately. So it puts them in a bind where they're sitting here being like, oh my God, we have Forrest Whitley and we can't do anything with him. Because this is it. This is our only option.
Yeah, there's 2 names at Double-A, just leaderboard surfing, that have K- BB percentages over 20. Rhett Kuba and Colton Gordon, but they're not guys that you're going to find on prospect lists. I think they're using both as starters, at least Kuba mostly as a starter so far, but they're 23 and 24 years old. They're not, they're not young guys. So if they come through and end up being quality pitchers for them, then there's some potential development wins there. But I think you guys are right. I think it's a wave that's a little ways away for that next group of Houston pitchers. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do if they have more injury problems before McCullers gets back, especially because they're starting to thin out pretty good as far as those major league options. We really haven't seen that happen to them.
Are we seeing a wave in San Francisco? Is there a little mini wave? Is there like a
Oh,
I'm segueing.
You're talking about the Casey
segue.
Schmidt plus now Patrick Bailey. I mean, Patrick Bailey.
Harrison's on the way.
Harrison
Luis
might be there
Matos is
soon.
playing well again, isn't he?
Matos he got a promotion up to AAA. He was one of the one of the most surprisingly great bats in the AFL this past year that just keeps moving up. And pretty incredible too, because I have a vivid memory of that, whatever it was, 2018. I guess it's not that vivid because I don't remember the year, but that year of rookie ball where, it was like Corbett Carroll and CJ Abrams, but the Giants team had Luis Matos, Marco Luciano, and Jairo Palmeras, 3 big prospects, all on their rookie ball team. And guess what? Luis Matos is going to beat them all. I would have never thought that. He's the guy that I think actually came later.
Having a 74 WRC plus last year in A ball and high A.
Yeah, he had big struggles. He's made big improvements. Yeah, so there's a mini wave. At least the development is pushing the guys that are going to be ready. Casey Schmidt, Kyle Harrison will be there. On the Patrick Bailey front, the minute Patrick Bailey got drafted, I instantly saw, Joey Bart is going to at best be a first baseman for this team, and Patrick Bailey will be their catcher for the future because defensively, that's where his home is. He's a stud defensive catcher, great framer. There's a couple videos out there that are already shown some of his really good framing. But fantasy-wise, I'm not really in fantasy-wise. Pulled a nice homer, but he's hitting under 200, doesn't strike out a bunch. I think he's just fine. He's a way better real-life player than I think fantasy player.
Well, I think at catcher, it's pretty interesting because sometimes that works for us. We play in so many 2-catcher leagues that being the better real-life player might mean you get 2/3 of the playing time.
Yeah.
And as long as you offer something either in terms of not being a liability in average, or you can pop 10 or 12 or 15 homers, that's usually good enough for a second catcher spot. So this is pretty interesting. I remember the night they drafted Patrick Bailey, MLB Network, of course, trying to make the MLB draft like the NFL draft, said, how are they going to make all the catchers work? They got Buster Posey and they got Joey Bart and now Patrick Bailey. And it's like, well, time sort of answers those questions in baseball. Obviously, Buster Posey retired and we've learned a lot more about Joey Bart. And yeah, and you got universal DH. So all of those things have occurred just in the little bit of time since they drafted Bailey. But I think when the catcher pool has been kind of rough this year in redraft. There hasn't been a lot of value that's surfaced. There have been a couple of younger guys that have underperformed in single catcher leagues that have left people scrambling unexpectedly. And I think, looking at the tools and the grades and everything on Bailey, I'm like calmly saying it's more of a second catcher in a 15-team league sort of profile. It's not a must go get in your 10-team 1-catcher league sort of thing. But yeah, if you think they're going to kind of look more to the future, guys like Bailey and Schmidt are going to play a ton for this Giants team. Yeah.
Also, there's that catching renaissance. I talked about this a lot over the last 2 years, where there is this, again, just keeping with the theme, the wave of these catching prospects that were ranking so high and that they're starting to come up to the majors. Well, this is happening. So, I kind of almost a tiny bit disagree, with the catching sentiment of what you said, catching. Yeah, it hasn't been maybe magnificent, but I do feel like there has been value. Gabriel Moreno has jumped way up. Jonah Heim has been a huge advantage. Sean Murphy. I mean, I hate in fantasy, and everyone knows about me. I hate paying up for catcher. I think it's silly. I want to play in the middle, and the middle is where the payoff comes. But to your point, it did fall off in those 2 catcher leagues on that latter second catcher. But there are a lot of rookies that are going to pop up. So Patrick Bailey's, I think, cool right now, but you are going to get the Kevin Paradas that are coming soon, offensive base catcher, Diego Cartaya, Dalton Rushing with the Dodgers, and Henry Davis. Henry Davis should qualify when he comes up as a primary catcher. So there's a lot of these guys that are going to improve the pool, which will be nice. I just don't know if Patrick Bailey's offense is going to be able to be on par with all those names I just talked about. I think it's behind every single one of those. And those are just some of the top 100 catchers.
Yeah, we're already seeing Francisco Alvarez, so much raw power in that profile. You would look at his offensive ceiling compared to Bailey's. There's a pretty big difference favoring Alvarez there. We've talked about Endy Rodriguez, his versatility. Both he and Davis could be on the same team together, and Rodriguez can play all over. We saw Logan O'Hoppe for a little while before that injury. It looked like he was going to have a really nice campaign. At least was putting the early pieces together for that. I hope we see Bo Naylor soon. I know he's having issues controlling the running game, according to the Guardians. That's the big problem right now. I have no idea why they can't find a way to make him.
They brought him up for like a day, and then they sent him back down.
They're like, awful. They brought him up for a doubleheader, and their lineup is horrendous. How do you not have some room for Bo Naylor to play sometimes? That just blows my mind. But there is a Guardians player that just went back on the minor league IL that I think is kind of interesting, and it's George Valera, because he's been very young for the level everywhere he's played. There's plenty of raw power. Certainly there are some questions about swing and miss, but Welsh, are we at the point where George Valera's become a little bit underrated, in part because of time lost to injuries?
That's a good question. I'm a difficult person to answer that, because I have like a long history with Valera from rookie ball, and amount of time I spent with him and interviews and talking with him, and I've always been a big fan. So like to me, ironically, I'd actually say like he's not really underrated in that. It's actually more frustrating than anything else that this is like the second or third time this has happened this year. It has been consistent. He actually might be one of the most injury prone minor leaguers that I've ever seen, and the kid is only 22 years old. But to your point, I think so many people have kind of fallen off of the George Valera train because guys like me pushed him up so high, and he has had those struggles, and he's had batting average struggles that I do think he's someone who should be paid attention to in some of those deeper leagues where people might have let go of him, because what are the encouraging things? His strikeout rate in just a few of the games that he came up this year dropped. He's continued to always walk. The problem is the quality of contact has never been there, but the guy has a Robinson Cano-like swing that everyone will fall in love with. He's got easy 20 plus power. He can run a bit, but he's going to fill out where he's going to be more of a middle of the order hitter than he is going to ever steal. The problem is he's had he's had multiple like hamate bone and wrist injuries that are keeping him off, that I do think those are kind of making him the prospect. He's going to have like a prospect rebound at some point where everyone's gonna be like, holy crap, like George Valera is here and he's doing something. The problem is yeah, like you said, the injuries have kept him from having like a full season to really get stuff together. I would say I thought he was a candidate to come up to the majors this year, but I don't know where this is going, and it might lead him to an AFL stint. But yeah, you should pay attention to Valera this year because he has the tools to be a successful fantasy player. It's just they keep kind of falling apart.
Yeah, it also strikes me when I'm looking at him that he's just not a Guardians type player.
Yeah, very much so. You're right about that.
He's just, the strikeout rate's too high. It's a weird line. It's not exactly what you'd expect from a Guardians player. But there was an interesting thing in an interview with Andrew Baggerly, where he talked to Farhan Zaidi, and he said, hey, I'm not accusing you of anything, but, you guys have a sort of organizational values when it comes to things like controlling the strike zone and this and that. And you look up in this major league team and it's pretty white. Is there like a way that you kind of fall in love with your organizational values in terms of what you're looking for, and that those things might be fostered in, say, like a college environment more than a different environment, and that's how you end up in this place where you aren't drafting these kinds of players because they're not exhibiting these things, and you end up not having a diverse set of approaches in your big league team. And he said that's the thing that we think about a lot on the Giants, Farhan said, and I think it's difficult because like I've said a lot of times on the show before, it's just you want to tell your coaches that you believe in something. You want to have an approach. You want to be like, hey, we love controlling the strike zone. Or if you're the Guardians, we love contact. We want contact above everything else. And then what happens to George Valera? So I wonder what the Guardians think internally of George Valera. Are they excited about him because he's different and he's not necessarily the same as they've always come before? Or are they saying, he doesn't really fit our whole scheme, and we'll find time to, if someone gets injured, maybe he gets a shot. I don't have a sense of this from the outside, but I wonder what Valera's stature is within the organization as being a guy who strikes out that much on a team that loves not striking out.
He's very highly sought out. I mean, he's best friends with, or at least was, with Brian Rocchio. Those guys have been kind of attached at the hip for a long time.
Like half his strikeout rate.
Exactly. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. But he's always been seen as, he's had a superstar kind of quality, and I think they have seen that in him. Very high. He's an interesting story, George Valera. He actually grew up in the U.S., and his father got in a really bad car accident when he was like 13 or 14, and they had to move to the Dominican Republic because of the cold weather was affecting his father. So he went over to the Dominican Republic, and then he was able to sign internationally. So he was a huge high dollar international signing out of the J2 at the time, the J2 class, and he had played, prep ball here and then went over there, and he exhibits this. They love it. I think they still love the swing, his ability to walk. I think they feel like they can fix some of the strikeout issues. He's got superstar quality, and I think he's always been seen in that respect, but there has to be a frustration with the amount of time. I mean, literally my first time talking with George Valera was because he had the Hammett injury and he was missing the championship of the Guardians in the AFL, and we talked for half an hour. Like, he's always hurt, and that's got to change.
Hammates, because as Pablo Sandoval said, no more Hammates, no more problem.
I don't know if he has anymore, if it is, but like, I think Valera will be a fun story down the road. He's just like, as a top 100 guy, I think he has easy top 100 prospect return, but I don't think a lot of people are valuing it there because they're like, what are we going to do with the strikeout rates, the batting average rates, and he never plays. But I do think we're going to see him at some point this year, and I will probably be geeking out about it.
Got one last question for you guys. And by the way, my type of player is not the same type of player as the Cleveland Guardians. So I would be interested in George Valera. I would acquire George Valera.
You like your high strikeouts, your bad stuff, all that.
I'd like guys that hit the ball hard. I don't think Cleveland really likes guys that hit the ball hard. At least they don't know how to find them. That's the problem they're running into right now.
If I like any approach to acquiring talent, I like the Rays. They acquire guys who hit the ball hard and have a good sense of the zone and make good contact, and they do that at the expense of barrels. So sometimes they hit the ball hard on the ground, but it still ends up being okay, I think.
Let's give Valera to the Rays, please.
Well, you have to hit the ball hard to hit a barrel.
Ever hit the barrel hard.
I think it's hard. There are ways to hit the ball harder. We know that's like a newer part of what people can do in the offseason, train with heavier bats, all the different things you can do to increase bat speed. But it's easier to hit the ball in the air more often, comparatively speaking, at least I believe it is, than it is to start hitting the ball harder. I think that takes a lot more. So
that could be true.
That might be why the Rays go that route. Is this a window to deal for Jordan Lawlar in long-term leagues? He's struggling a bit at Double-A. Kind of goes back to last season. He struck out about 30% of the time since arriving there last year. He is very young for the level. We've seen in-game power. We're seeing an efficient base stealer. He's still the long-term shortstop of the future for the D-backs. And I just feel like he's one of those elite of the elite prospects who, because of his initial struggles at Double-A, is actually obtainable in fantasy leagues right now. He's not untouchable, and we're hitting that sweet spot. We're approaching the Memorial Day weekend. Everyone starts to get a little antsy this time of year and is willing to make trades. So if you're in a situation where you're playing for the future, there's someone who has Jordan Lawlar in your league, maybe they're playing for now, I actually think you can get something done. Are there any red flags that I'm missing in this profile that would give you pause at this point? What do you think, Welsh?
I mean, the red flag would be the strikeout percentage. Around 32% is a bit of a problem. I actually thought this is something he was going to be able to control as he moved up levels, and it's gotten worse at every single level. He did a really good job in the AFL, but he has literally gone from A-ball to 23% strikeout rate up to 31. But I completely agree with you because since Complex League, it's the highest walk percentage he's had. His ground ball rate is actually the lowest we've seen. His line drive rate is up. And not counting Complex League, it's the highest that it's been. Fly ball rate is up. And he also has an insanely low BABIP. It's like 200. And in the minors, I think he's had an average of just around 3, like 295. So I think there's been a lot of bad luck. There's a really big transitional period of going to Double-A. That jump from like high A to Double-A is huge. So I'm worried about the strikeout rate, but I think a lot of other things are still in his favor. He still, can absolutely put 20-25 in the air. He can absolutely steal 20 to 25. And I think he can be a number 3 hitter for the Diamondbacks. So we need to see the strikeouts go down, but I'm encouraged that he's not like, hitting a bunch of stuff into the ground. He's still hitting a lot of line drives, actually pulling the ball more than ever. I think it just needs to be an adjustment. So I think I agree with you. It's a great time to buy.
Do you think that the labrum tear has anything to do with anything? He didn't play in 2021 basically because he had labrum surgery.
Yeah, but he played he played in the AFL. Well, actually, he got hurt again in the AFL, and he missed the kind of like the last 2/3 of the Arizona Fall League. He got some time into last year. He played a ton in spring. Maybe I'm making excuses. I don't feel like it affected Corbin Carroll. I feel like it's affecting Drew Jones is a little bit more affected by the injuries. He's already had like 3 injuries off of the big one, and he's missing some big developmental time. I think it's like just
3 labrum surgeries.
I think it's like, it's crazy. I think it's just developmental time of seeing pitches. And I think that's what Jordan Lawlar is at. Jordan Lawlar is experiencing, I think, a new group of pitchers that are being attacked. You also have, I don't know how much, if there's any, if he's dealing with teams that have that tacked up ball and are getting better grips and stuff like that. You don't really know the full effect of it, but I'm going to say no overall, because it seems like he's been relatively healthy since.
Yeah, I think it's good. One of those moves you can make it right now. You can get him right now in a long-term league, but a few months from now or early next season, it might be a lot harder to trade.
Or he might not even be a top prospect. I mean, that he's at a fulcrum right now. I mean, we're talking about 230, 250 plate appearances of below 100 WRC plus at AA. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to be the stinker in the room, but like, if he does this for another 200 innings, he's not a prospect.
And I think, he's still a prospect,
400 plate appearances. I don't know.
But I do agree, like
he has an 80 WRC plus for the year this year in AA. He's not a prospect next year.
You need to see it turn, and we need to see it turn. Even if I would still though say that this, again, it's not linear. Like, he could struggle this whole year, and we can rebound from this, but he'll lose some of the luster.
And it'll change a sense of his ceiling.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
Instead of being a top 10 or top 20 guy, he'll be a top 50 or top 60 guy. But he's still going to play in the big leagues, and he's still going to hit for power and steal bases once he gets there.
And maybe this is like just way too simple, and I'm too simplifying it, but like, if I didn't see like an insanely dramatic low BABIP, I might be like a little bit like, yeah, let's sit around and maybe let's see if this gets any better. But like, that BABIP, that's gonna change. You're not gonna have a 200 the whole year. Like, he's gonna improve to what level we don't know, or the strikeout's gonna get any better. Those aren't necessarily correlated, but I tend to think when I see like a super low BABIP like that, it's going to bounce back. So this is a time, I'm with you, DVR. Like, I think I could pull the trigger right now and not worry too much about more downside or too much more downside.
I know what I'm going to be doing this evening when I'm stuck on the phone trying to make moves after feeding the baby. So I've got a plan for my Tuesday night. Nice little Tuesday in the Van Viper household.
Little Jordan Lawlar, little Home Depot. Don't know what you got.
On the couch.
Yeah, that's all of the above. If you want more fun things to do than trying to trade for Jordan Lawlar, check out a subscription to The Athletic. $2 a month gets you in the door. TheAthletic.com/rates and barrels will actually get you that offer. You can find us all on Twitter. You can find Eno at Eno Saris. Welsh is at Is It The Welsh. I am at Derek Van Riper. That is going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Wednesday.
Thanks for listening.